Hello again.
Hi, how's it going today?
How are you today?
Pretty
It
good. Thanks.
is.
Did you have a nice weekend?
Yeah, yeah, it's busier than I expected.
Yeah, I know. It was tiring.
Okay, why won't this move?
I'm gonna turn my camera off really fast and see how much of this sandwich I can devour before we start. So be right
Okay.
back.
Yep.
And I am running to the printer.
Good evening.
Hey, Bob, how's it going?
Going well. How are you?
Pretty good, thank you. Did you have a nice weekend?
I did. How about yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. We were down the Cape. It was nice. So, yeah.
Well, it's a nice weekend for that, for sure.
Yeah, I have some in-laws there and these days. So, Stephanie was printing something and Mickey was finishing a bite of her sandwich.
I am back.
And I saw Suzanne today. I was signing the Main Street plans, and she wasn't sure about, um,
Amos?
yeah. So let's 1 minute and let Amos join if he's going to, and let Mickey finish what she was doing, and then we'll start up.
I got half the sandwich. We're good.
Oh. That's good. All right. Well, if you need other sandwich breaks, let us know. Great. Okay, so welcome to the Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 regular meeting of the Easton, Massachusetts Planning and Zoning Board. This meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board and commission members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded on ECAT. To use Zoom, you will need to use the link on the agenda or download the Zoom application and create an account or use one of the call-in numbers listed on the agenda. While conducting meetings remotely, we will endeavor to keep meeting operations as close to our standard procedures as possible. However, use of this platform will necessitate some additional meeting protocols. While board members or commissioners and applicants will be on video and audio, public participants will join the webinar as attendee, meaning they are muted and with no video feed from them. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, members of the public can be recognized by using the raised hand function found under participants from Zoom or make a request with the Q&A function. If you are joining only by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. Regardless of how you join the meeting, please make sure to state your name and address for the record. It's good for the public meeting law and also for our recording secretary to take good notes. Other than that, there are a few more rules on the second page of the agenda if you'd like to, rules or notes, if you'd like to read them. So we'll start with attendance. Wolf, are you present?
Here, present.
Stetson.
Present.
DeShane, present. Okay. Looks like so. Mickey is our alternate member, so the way it really sort of works is that if her participation is required for a quorum, then her vote counts. So in this case, as in many of our meetings, since we're a little shorthanded, she is acting as a full voting member today. The first item on the agenda is 537 Turnpike Street special permit duplex. Is this happening, Stephanie?
Yep. Patrick is here, and if he needs to unmute himself, and if there's anyone else joining you, Patrick, please let me know.
Nope, just me as far as I know, Stephanie.
Hello, sir. Please introduce yourself and your relationship to the project.
Yep, Pat Carrara from PMP Consulting, representing Hung Lee for 537 Turnpike Street.
Mhm.
I believe this was a continuance from a prior hearing. There was a couple of minor issues that needed to be worked out with the special permit site plan. We submitted revised site plans. We took the comments, and I see that the architectural plans and whatnot had been revised to break up the face of the building. One of the units was stepped back 4 feet. There was some dormers added to the second floor. I noticed the architect did call out architectural shingles on the roof of the plan. And you'll have to forgive me, I wasn't part of the last couple of meetings, so I don't know if there was any other concerns. I know there was some landscaping also added to the front. There was some questions about landscaping. I know that was also added to the special permit plan. So again, just, forgive me if I'm missing anything, as I wasn't part of the past meetings, but, here to do the best I can to answer any other questions that you may have.
Okay, are you available to share your screen if we have any questions about the new plans?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Stephanie, do you have some notes on this for us?
I do have some comments, and I did update my staff report. They did narrow each of the driveways and leading up to, I don't have the exact measurement, but they do widen out as they approach the buildings for turnaround and additional parking space, as you can see there. They've provided a fairly robust landscaping plan, which looks good, mostly native species. They aren't all true natives. It looks like some are cultivars, but again, native species plants for the most part. The elevation, as Patrick pointed out, they did step back the building, one of the buildings from the other. So presumably the roof lines will actually be broken up. That was one of the comments I had in my report, was that it was just one contiguous roof, or showed as one contiguous roof line. The Historical Commission requested or made a comment that they would like to see something that was more historically contextual with the area, and hardy board siding. They're showing vinyl siding, and the step back doesn't really change the look of the structure much.
Yeah, board members, do you have any comments comments on the site plan or the revised architectural plans?
Actually, if you give me 1 second, I can bring up the architectural plan, Stephanie, if you want me to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for the landscaping. Looks pretty comprehensive. And we'd already discussed the 2 driveways, so I don't think we need to revisit that.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so I know what Stephanie said, when you're looking at an architectural plan and a flat sheet of paper, it probably will not do justice to what this is going to look like. But you can see on the drawing here, the first floor and the second floor plan, there is a step back from the left to the right unit. Second floor plan, again, you can see the step back. It's the attic floor plan. You can see where the dormers would be on the second floor. So, again, when you're looking at a flat sheet of paper, you're right, it still looks like one contiguous roof line. But there is a step back between the units, and with the dormers, it will break up, so you don't just have one big, long roof line looking at it from the street. And I did speak to the applicant, Stephanie, about any other requirements such as the hardy board and stuff. And if that's something that the board, wished to move forward with, she was agreeable to it.
So my recommendation to the board would be that they do require it. This is a special permit. So the board can request a higher level of standard, Peter. One other question is, Patrick, if you could go back to the site plan
Sure.
and talk about the grades into the driveway, because it looks like, of course, it's going to slope down into the garage. And is that going to create, or one would presume it's going to create the flow of stormwater is going to be directed down towards the garage.
Okay, so what we have here is the garage slabs are proposed at 91.5. There'll be retaining walls on either side of each driveway, and the driveways will slope out away from those garage floors. We have a 91 here, and then an existing 90 heading out towards Turnpike Street. So they will slope out and away. This drive would be able to drain not just towards 138, but also off in this direction. The same with this driveway. It would actually drain off, slightly towards the north, and not just into 138.
So the buildings the first floor is going to be raised above the garage. I mean, what's the exposure on the garage?
So that's why we've got the retaining walls, because these I guess you would technically call it like a garage under style. But the water table at the soil testing is going to force the septics up. We haven't designed those yet, but we know they're going to come up. So this grading, especially on this side and out in the back for the septic tanks, this will get expanded a little bit in order to accommodate the septic systems. So these are not walkouts in the back per se. They would be, full foundations with coverage. Top of foundations at 98.5, and we've got an elevation of at least 95 coming off the side. So at the most, we're looking at about 3 feet of exposure.
So have you completed any test pits as far as to ascertain the water
Yes,
level?
the soil testing has been completed.
So based on that, is the 95 going to be like fairly accurate or not?
I believe so. Again, if it comes up a little bit more, it's just going to cover more of the foundation. There'll be less exposure on those sides.
Okay, right, I see. Right, so it'll be like a couple feet or something. It won't, it's not a matter of like 4 or 5 feet. Okay. Could we look at the front of the building again, please?
Sure. Let me switch back over. Yep, that's the front elevation.
What do you have like planned for like the steps and railings? Maybe, I mean, we're not really forcing like telling you what is historical for that area, but I mean, I think maybe some kind of like features like that might at least add to the look. What do you?
Yeah, I honestly do not know that answer. But again, if there's something that you want to see on these, like I said, I've spoken to the applicant, and she's certainly willing to work with you and make any of those little changes that you want to, as you feel that this will fit in a little bit better in the area. Yeah,
well, that's not really my realm where I start telling people what is a historical look on Washington Street. But I mean, as we can work off the existing building and maybe think about what it had, or I don't know, Mickey or Bob, you have any desire to comment on making this look more historical?
Yeah, the architectural side of things is not really my department either, Peter.
Yeah,
but I do share there's some blank space there that I don't know if something can be done to alleviate the concerns that were raised by historical.
Yeah. I mean, I thought maybe like instead of just having like plain like PVC railings, you can have some sort of not real cast iron railings, but the black type that you get at the building supply store possibly or something like that. And the steps, I'm not sure about the steps.
I think the steps will just be probably either wood or Trex. Just going back to the the first floor plan, you can see that, these look like they are designed to be, a wooden either Trex or wooden style deck landing and then steps down to grade. And then looking at the second floor plan, there is a roof line that'll come out over those step areas.
Yep.
To create that little kind of a shed dormer look over the stairs.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe some light posts up along the walkway or driveway or something, a couple, and I mean, I don't know. It seems like, like maybe could do something over the garage there, but I just don't have a really good vision of what would be appropriate.
I mean, I get the feeling that the development across the street will be throwing plenty of light around.
No, yeah, that's probably true. Right, and I mean, the Hardy, if the owner is fine with the Hardy board, I guess we can add that as a condition.
Yes, she definitely is.
I don't know, I mean, do you need any more information here? We know there are three of us, so it would need to pass unanimously, being a special permit. I don't see that being a big risk, but I'm only one of three.
We'll probably, is this a public hearing, Peter?
Yeah, it's a
Yes.
special permit public hearing, so we have to close the public hearing portion, and then we can't ask for any additional information. Maybe we should ask if there's a public comment before we proceed.
Let me check. Patrick, could you stop sharing for a moment,
Of
please?
course.
It's hard for me to see all the participants. I don't see any raised hands.
Okay, well, in that case, the next steps would be to close the public hearing, make a motion for that, and vote on it, and then we could actually vote on the actual item.
A motion to close the public hearing.
Second, Stetson.
Okay, all in favor, Stetson?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
DeShane, aye. Okay, we could talk about any conditions that we would add to the approval, which so far has really just been the Hardy board. Did we miss anything else there, Stephanie? Did you catch anything? I don't think Alice had any special concerns last time either.
No, you did mention the railings, but I didn't quite catch other than.
Well, I don't know, Bob or Mickey, do you think that's worthwhile? To maybe have like a non-PVC and a better looking railing there, or is that just not really?
If you think it'll help, I support it.
I'll support. Yeah, I've been on the historical commission for 5 years, and all I've learned is all of that I don't know. So I'll support.
Okay, well, it's a good start. All right, I didn't know that either. So cool.
I'll make a motion to approve the special permit on condition that Hardy board is installed and non-PVC railings. Stetson.
Second, Wolf.
Okay. All in favor, Stetson?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
DeShane, aye. All right, that passes. Thanks for spending the time with the historical commission and the staff and our meetings.
No, and I thank you all very much for working with us on this, and I think it'll be a big improvement to the area.
Great. Okay, have a good night.
You too. Thank you very much.
Right. Okay, here we go. And now we're back to community housing zoning, MBA communities, also known as MBTA zoning. And if we have any public participants, we're going to talk about this a little bit, and we'll open it up to the public. Just remember to state your name and address for the record. And then, raise your hand as usual if you'd like to be promoted as a panelist.
Do you want me to start, Peter?
Yeah, sure.
So at the last meeting, so what I'm going to cover first is I put a summary together of the thoughts and reasoning behind the districts that the board is considering. And then I've made some updates to the zoning language that we discussed at last meeting. So I'd like to go through, and I will display this matrix. The board has it in their binder. So there was a question by the public why the Washington Street North or Roach Brothers Plaza area was not one of the potential districts that was being discussed at the last meeting. So I did put this matrix together that just summarizes. Okay, so everyone see the matrix?
Yes.
All right, and I'm going to try to make it a little bit bigger to fill the screen better. Oh, sorry. So we will post this on the website as appropriate after tonight's meeting, the webpage that we have for this zoning. I list the criteria, the requirements for the MBTA communities zoning, and then the proposed parameters for the setbacks. And then looking at that, we did update the model, and you have Eastman Foundry, 68 total developable acreage based on the running it through the compliance model. You have multifamily unit capacity of 1,021 units. And then the criteria or the points that made this an area that was under consideration was, one, it meets the minimum requirement. At least one of the districts must be 25 acres of contiguous acre. It also meets the maximum minimum acreage in total, which is the 50 acres. It has access to municipal sewer. So you know that you don't have to, the town would not have to worry about on-site septic system, although, you know, MBTA housing and community, let's see, livable communities, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities has basically stated that developers will figure out how to provide for on-site septic. It's walkable to a variety of services, amenities, and open space and passive recreation. So it has a lot more of those walkable services, businesses than the other areas. In the near term, and I think, Bob, you pointed this out at the meeting, and I think it's been in the back of our minds, that it really has a low probability for near-term development of the larger retail parcels. The development in this area utilizing this zoning would be paced over time. There are some parcels that are already vacant. The board has already heard a preliminary proposal for a couple of those acres parcels combined. But it's not likely, especially based on the empirical evidence, that at least the Big Y Plaza is doing quite well, likely as a result of the residents living at Avalon. Target doesn't seem to be going anywhere soon. So it wouldn't necessarily be built out within a short period of time. The total capacity assures compliance with the 10% minimum unit capacity as well. And then there's a demonstrated ability when you look at Avalon to accommodate higher density and with the commercial mix that already exists there. If you look at Belmont Street, Washington Belmont, there are 28 acres developable, and it has a total capacity of 479 units. It does meet the minimum requirement of being at least 25 contiguous acres. It has access to municipal sewer, access to outdoor passive recreation. That would come in the form where on Foundry Street, the outdoor recreation and open space is primarily town-owned conservation land in quite large parcels with walking trails. in this case, the open space really is access to the Stonehill campus, where they do allow and have encouraged people from the community to walk and take advantage of the open space that they have available
Yeah,
there.
and sheep pasture, right?
And sheep pasture, yep, which is just up the road. Let's see. And it's walkable to a variety of amenities and services. And then, as we've mentioned in the past, there are some property owners that are very interested in the MBTA zoning and being able to build at an increased density level than what would be allowed today, and doing multifamily there. If you look at Washington North, it meets it too. So all three of these parcels meet the minimum 25 contiguous acres for a sub-district. It's a prime location for expanding the district in the future when and if South Coast Rail moves forward. That would be the case if it was included as part of the district, even initially, because it would be in proximity, very close proximity to where the proposed station is. Something to note is that if that should happen in the future, then the town's minimum total capacity of 913 would be increased by 5%, because as a commuter rail transit community, that number would jump from 10% to 15%. It's in a prime location for, I said that, it's walkable to amenities and services. It really does not have close access to open space or recreation.
Yeah. Could you just maybe just explain, just for the others watching, how many total acres are required by the state law?
So the total acreage is 50. The district has to be a minimum of 50 acres in total. 25 of those acres has to be contiguous area, and then each sub-district has to be a minimum of 5 acres. And again, the minimum amount in total, so the density for the zoning has to allow at least 15 units per acre. However, there is a minimum 10% requirement, 10% capacity. The minimum capacity has to be equal to 10% of the town's permanent housing stock as of the 2020 census.
Can I chime in with a question? On Eastman Foundry, in doing the analysis that you guys have been working on, what do we know what the multifamily unit capacity is currently, based on the zoning that we approved last year or the year before?
On with the special permits, Bob, we haven't calculated it with the special permits. We'd have to go back and do that.
Okay. I mean, I know there were more.
I mean, what that capacity, you know, I hadn't thought about that, but that's something we could go in and calculate. Again, it would be a rough estimate.
Right. I think Bob has a pretty good point, though. If you looked at that and also say on the Washington Belmont, you kind of say, okay, well, this is what is already could already be approved by special permit, and this is what it would be under MBTA zoning, right?
Yep.
It might, I think MBTA zoning allows for more density, but maybe not as much more. And,
Yep.
May not be as dramatic as, but who knows? I would be curious if we could get a riff on that.
Right. And on the, so how we'd look at it is based on the maximum number laid out in the bylaw.
Right, and that's sort of the
But
way
understand.
I mean, that's sort of how we got to like Eastman Foundry and Washington Belmont, was that we already had underlying zoning which allows multifamily, right? So
No.
we weren't just creating like new zones where where multifamily is an option. It was just we'd already created these two districts
Yeah.
with allowances for multifamily by special permit. So that was sort of, we were thinking like, well, we're trying to add way extra to the apartment stock. We're just taking where
So
already be.
So if I understand you, Peter, if you're talking about the Furnace Village District, that wasn't I don't think that was really the consideration at the time. I think the consideration and what towns were doing was looking where they already had multifamily developed at the density that was required. And Avalon, and one of the things it does is if you have that level of density in an area, it really gives people a visual to understand what it would look like on the ground. And certainly Avalon is just under, I think they're 14. I think what Wayne mentioned, it's either 13 or 14 units per acre on Avalon 1. And then the townhouse, I think he said, are 15 units per acre. So that's what we were looking at. I don't think it was necessarily, and then Belmont Street was because there is already multifamily housing there. Again, that if you divided the parcel thereon, if you divided it off into say 2 1-acre parcels, you could get a sense of, again, what that density would look like. I think the larger unit has 34 units. The larger building has 34 units, and the smaller one has about 14 or 15 units.
Okay, yeah. I think we're on the same track there. I think what I'm saying is that current zoning for the 2 areas allows more multifamily than is allowed under the straight up zoning bylaw, which is pretty obvious. So okay. All right. Should we move on to the bylaw changes and then open it up for the public, or how do you guys think?
I think someone has a raised hand.
Or do you want to stick?
Or do you want to wait till we get through that and then?
Well, if we can stay on this and
entertain
keep moving along, I don't mind taking public comment as we go along. But let's just we gotta kind of keep kind of stay on track here. We're gonna review this, right, and then we'll move on to the bylaw after this, and then we can open up for comment again. How's that?
Okay, so let me just figure out how. There we go. All right, I need the person who is calling in to indicate in the chat. I'm going to allow Dale to talk first, if that's all right with you, Peter.
Yeah, sure.
And then the person who's dialed in, if they could please in the chat. Well, when you speak, you'll need to state your name and address for the record, as will Mr. Carrister.
Dale Carrister, 21 South Street. Can you hear me?
Yes, hello. Oh, yes, Dale, we can hear you.
Oh, wait a minute. I think sorry about that, Dale. That was my error.
We could hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, Dale Carrister, 21 South Street. And one question, does the board intend to vote with respect to its recommendation this evening? And if so, would suggest that perhaps it would be better to the extent they wait until they have a full attendance, given the importance of the issues. And
yeah, I agree. That was my plan.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, whether it might also be helpful in terms of identifying, in the notes section, not only what are identified as positives, but negatives as well, kind of across the board. I think it would sort of help everybody's understanding, and, certainly noting again that the Eastman District is the only one of these that has a limited, one way in and out of Easton on a 2-lane road. And again, I'm not mentioning these things for suggesting that there shouldn't be any portion of this down in our district, but just for purposes of the full consideration. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Okay, and then we have. I'm not sure, Kathy, okay, so wait a minute.
I'll see what I can see.
how to talk. This is someone calling in and they need to identify themselves. And
Well, this is Ross Greenfield, 29 South Street.
Hello. Oh, go ahead, sir.
This is Ross Greenfield from 29 South Street.
Okay, go ahead.
Question I have is relevant to the multifamily construction. When will the MBTA services be scheduled in
No,
comparison?
possibly never. The state law did not require any MBTA services as part of this zoning. They just said towns that are adjacent to another community with an MBTA connection are subject to this new rule. So it could be just a whole different program. It has nothing to do with this project. It sounds like it should, right? Because it's MBTA zoning, but really, it just said Easton is next to Mansfield and Brockton and Stone, which have MBTA connections. So being in an adjacent community, we have to, we're subject to this new requirement that the state voted for and the governor signed, the previous governor.
So it's essentially, so it just added housing and more cars to the infrastructure is what we're doing, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Not
Well,
my favorite either, but yeah.
Peter, if I could, I mean, the reason the state passed this into law is because there's a housing crisis in Massachusetts.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we've done we've done better than most other towns with multifamily.
We
So,
certainly have.
and we did it our way. So I think it's a good opinion, but it's not mine. But I won't state my opinion too much. I just was talking to the attendee. Did you have anything else? Any other comments, sir?
All right, it looks like Denise Higgins. And again, Peter, I know the last speaker stated his address. I just want to remind Ms. Higgins to state her address.
Denise Higgins, 4 New Pond Way. I'd like to ask the board if there is any at all consideration whatsoever by the board or the town as a whole to entertain the thought of abstaining entirely from the.
This is
Well,
what
I know
don't
that
know.
I know there's
everyone's
some
answer, but
municipalities.
it's crossed my mind, but I don't think it's crossed the selectman or the town administrator or like the other town departments. That's the best answer I can provide. Stephanie, do you have any?
No, so when the review team was assigned back last January, it actually was December of 2022, and they met through January of 23. If I'm not mistaken, the timeline, things blending together. It was considered and it was discussed, and it was at the committee asked itself and asked what the benefit was and what the impact would be, and determined that the town had benefited sufficiently from various state funding grants that to be cut off from those grants, because if you're not in compliance and you're an MBTA community, you will not be allowed to apply for certain grants, and those include infrastructure grants and planning grants. The infrastructure grants that have funded projects for Easton, like the sewer district, that helped reduce the sewer betterment costs. It covers design work and it covers construction work, and it was decided that the town should move forward.
And then even like it was like in mid or late spring, the state attorney general kind of commented that non-compliance is not an option, even though the attorney general didn't exactly say exactly what that means. They just sort of what they said. So it sounds like Stephanie did indicate that the panel that had been appointed, not this board, but a panel, to review, MBTA zoning and our options, did consider like that no action option. Of course, town meeting will be the ultimate, where this will be decided.
Oops.
Anything else? Anyone else? No? Should we
I
move on
think
to-
Denise may have a follow-up question.
Yep.
Yeah, so I understood everything that you said, but I was wondering if there was a cost benefit analysis done regarding abstaining entirely. I know there are some communities that are giving that some thought, and I'm just wondering when we do a cost benefit going forward. I completely understand the analysis of, what we've gained and what we hope to gain by state participation, but
I'm pretty sure the answer is no, there was not a cost benefit analysis done. I mean, I think one way you can look at it though is that no matter what we do here, the 40B, which requires a 10% affordable, is still there, right? So and even if we're right at around like the threshold right now, as time goes by, we'll drop below that threshold again, and then developers can just build multifamily without as much town input as we would have in this process or any other process, right? So it's sort of like, one of the reasons we have already what we set up was to kind of make a structure to try to get better results given the reality that we have to stay around 10%, otherwise the developer can just circumvent zoning, right? So that's this might be a little more dense than what we might need for to maintain that 10%, but it's kind of along the same lines, right? So it is kind of a big hurdle, I think, if you consider the town finances, but that's not an expert on the town finances. Stephanie, how far did those discussions go, to Denise's point?
Well, I think there's an offset when you talk about cost benefit analysis. New development brings revenue into the town.
Right, but we never
I
we never said
think
like, okay, so we never said,
that-
okay, like, let's actually look at this thing that already happened and really see how that has, trying to figure out how that has benefited the town and what, but it's a concept, which is the economic development, right? As far as more density, it's kind of what the state's trying to accomplish too, right? But I'm sure there are those who agree and some who might disagree with that.
yeah, I'm not necessarily convinced that single family housing or other residential housing is not regressive on the tax base. If you're topping over with some of your resources, and then the community that you live in no longer resembles the community and can provide the services that it once did. That's why I'm wondering the benefit in.
Well, that's kind of why people pay sometimes more to live in certain places, because they think it looks like a type of place where they want to live, right? So it's kind of along the lines of what you said. I agree in that way. There are cheaper places than Easton or even Massachusetts to live, right? And some people just live here because they do. But yeah, but
Right, but
other people choose to
I
live
think,
here,
Peter, I'm not sure. I think you might have cut me off when I talked about new development generate revenue for the town. And of course, there are some offsets to that. There may be a bigger demand on some of the public safety services, but maybe not more so than if the housing was distributed across a vaster area. Lost my train of thought there. But if you look at Avalon is the largest taxpayer in the town today.
Yep. I know, but no, even along that line though, I'm just talking about it. I mean, we asked, you said, okay, well, how many more kids really went to the school? And I know plenty of people that live in Avalon, so I'm not, it's not like I'm, but, and it was kind of like, the wishy-washy. It's like, oh, well, they were going to live somewhere else anyway, so we can't really keep track of that. But, it was a pretty basic question, right? Like how much services are is one new development using. It's not, you're not going to get an exact answer, but you could, you could get somewhere. I guess measuring the actual like economic, inferring the economic difference, right, for those people in Easton in Massachusetts, that's a little more complicated, but.
Peter, Dale has his hand raised again.
Yep. Dale, go ahead.
Hi, sorry about that. I just have one what I hope will be a practical suggestion that I think would be helpful for the board and the town more generally, which would be, there's been a determination to identify the Eastman Foundry District as 68. I think it would be helpful for the board to consider, an alternative for that district as well, something less than 68, presumably less than 50 and so forth, especially along the lines of equity, fairness, and so forth for spreading the benefits / burden, if you think it's a burden, in multiple areas in Easton. So I would just ask that if you can give some consideration to coming up for your next meeting, an alternative Eastman Foundry District that's something less than the 68.
Yeah, I think that's the track we're on. And, the one thing that does is it creates zoning for more multifamily than we already have. But so overall in the town, that would actually, since multifamily is already allowed by special permit in Eastman Foundry, we're actually, by bringing Roach, Washington Street into the mix, Roach Brothers, then that kind of, adds the total build, makes the total buildable number higher. But I think it's reasonable to balance it out based on.
Right. Yeah. And I guess I think we're saying the same thing, which is the extent that the board is considering having 2 or 3 districts, and spreading it out. Let's say it's just 2. If you take the 28 or the 38, and then maybe you consider having the size of the district for Eastman Foundry, but just to give yourself more options so you have the numbers when you next meet to consider what the various options are to meet the compliance requirements.
Yeah. It looks like we have way more acreage than we need at this point. So now that we have these numbers, we can work on the map, but we're going to have to do that relatively quickly. Not right now, but
okay,
next month or so.
Okay. Peter, I don't see any more raised hands.
Okay.
So I'm going to move to the zoning that we reviewed, the proposed language changes. Again, just going over and reiterating on the left-hand side, and again, we'll post this on the website. What we're proposing is replacing 235-40, which is called multifamily zoning. And under the current regulations, it pretty much zones out multifamily because you'd need a 60,000 square foot acre of land minimum. Any additional units would require an additional 20,000 square feet of land. But the real sticker here is that you can only have either a maximum of 3 units and you can only have a maximum of 3 bedrooms in total. So basically a building with 3 units with a single bedroom, or 2 units with 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms or something like that. So it really is unfeasible. It would be uneconomic for anyone to build that.
Yeah, really, all our multifamily over the last 10 years has either been by like 40B or by special permit. So right. Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
I don't think there has been one built under the zoning bylaws.
That is correct. So this just seemed we are trying to make the new zoning very clean and easy with changes as appropriate. So proposing changing that, just eliminating that language and adding in the community housing overlay district language. So we'd rename it to 235-40 community housing overlay district. And we went through the purposes of the zoning last week. And this was derived from the goals and guiding principles that were issued by the MBTA MBTA Review Committee in 2022. And I was wrong. They were appointed in 21, December of 21, and convened the first couple of months in 2022. The overlay district does not replace the existing zoning districts, but is superimposed over them. So any developer could come in and still propose a project, or if it's a by right project, they could move forward with that project under the old zoning. However, if they take advantage of the MBTA community zoning, then once they get that permit, that's how that has to be developed. Procedures and regulations. Again, the board is allowed site plan review, and the board may adopt regulations to facilitate layout, building design, and outdoor amenity spaces.
Did we find out about the traffic study? Possibility of asking for a traffic study?
The board can request a traffic study as part of site plan review.
Yep. Okay, that's what I thought.
Okay. Then you'll see what I've added in red here since the last meeting is the I believe it's since the last meeting, is a definition of multifamily to the code. There was no definition in section 60 of definitions. So we are adding it right here, and it means a building with 3 or more residential dwelling units or 2 or more buildings on the same lot with more than 1 residential dwelling unit in each building. Now, because we're considering a density bonus, which we'll discuss in a minute, the next section just states that developments under this section, and that means under the community housing overlay district, that it may also include other non-residential unit uses permitted in an underlying zoning district. However, the following uses are not permitted. And this would be in the event that you're allowing a mixed use or a mixed use project is being proposed. So we're stating that no motor vehicle related uses like garages, gas stations, etc., be allowed. Kennels, parking lots that are strictly standalone parking lots, and self-storage units. Then we talked last week about the affordability requirement. Any development containing 8 or more dwelling units would have at least, and under the guidelines right now, the maximum you can have is 10%. The town is undertaking a fiscal analysis to determine if that percentage can be higher, so that those units can that be higher, or that the AMI rate be lower. In either case, it has to be demonstrated through the fiscal analysis that it is financially feasible for a developer to be required to have whatever that percentage over 10% might be affordable. Otherwise, it won't be accepted by housing and livable communities when the zoning is submitted for them to review. As we do whenever we're referencing affordable housing units as a requirement, they must qualify as local action units, which is defined under the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Community Guidelines, GLC 40B. And let's see. Number 3 really just ties back to the affordable units and that they have to have a recorded deed restriction. Last week, we talked about the mixed use density bonus. Really, what we're thinking, although we did add a maximum 15 units per acre, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but that the additional density that would be allowed might be an allowance to go up to 5 floors, but that's for the board to discuss and talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like 4 might be, we can talk about right now. I thought 4 might be better, but then it only leaves one floor of, well, it gives you, right, it's like one floor of commercial, right? And you get one extra floor of residential.
Or you could allow 2 buildings on the site, and maybe one of the buildings is commercial, and then the other building is all
Yeah.
residential.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But
I like that idea.
mhm. So we could go down to 4 and then just allow this, like the commercial could be a separate building.
Through separate buildings, yeah, because I think that, you know, if you only allow, you know, assuming commercial is going to be on the first floor, and then you're just only going up one additional
Yeah.
floor, you're not giving enough incentive to get that done,
Right.
because the commercial units these days just aren't worth what they once were.
Yeah. Okay.
So Bob, you're also saying you think 4 floors max?
I think that's fine as a compromise, so long as we have that option to have the commercial in a, you know, in a separate building. I think that's
Probably works better most times anyways if the lot.
I think it probably does. Yeah.
So let's see, I think we go back down to this.
Actually, Stephanie, could you zoom in just a little bit?
Yep,
I'm
I
waiting
can
until
zoom in a lot
waiting until I
because we
turn
don't
50
need to
on
read the
glasses.
other
Yeah, thank you.
stuff as much. So let me just,
Oh, that's great.
how's that? Is that better?
It was better a second ago.
You want it super big? Hold
Oh
on.
no, there's a couple clicks.
There we go. Is that
Oh,
better?
No, that's perfect. Thanks.
Okay, so let me just capture.
And I don't know how to write that in. I know we had that funny question a year or so ago, where there was the building in the Main Street area or the Village District that had like the one office, and they were trying to call the whole thing mixed use.
Oh, okay.
I think I'd like to try to prevent that. I mean, I think the spirit of what we're talking about is if we have like a, you know, a pad building, you know, where a restaurant or a cafe or whatever,
Right.
then you would get the density bonus.
Let's look into what ratio it works pretty well, could work well these days. We know 2/3 commercial is never going to work, right? So if someone knows it, if people know more about that than I do, and we could like pick something like 1/3 or 25%, something like that. That seems like it would be like a, you know, an actual commercial use, right? Not just like an ancillary, you know, throw a commercial building in there so we can go up 4 stories.
So what I'm hearing from other planners, and some of these planners are holding a hard line, so it's not that everyone's going, oh yeah, is that the holding a certain percentage is a struggle for the developers. Like the idea of having a building, a separate building.
Well, it's a struggle, except that we're allowed, this is by right multifamily anyway. So it's like, okay, well, we want you to, you know, you don't just get that extra floor just because you, like Bob said, you put in like you have a little,
right. And Peter, all I'm trying to,
what if we did it by, because I think the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish with this is to make it a nice walkable place for people to actually want to live. And I think, you know, we're not talking about office space and things of that nature. So what if we were to limit it to more, you know, retail or restaurant, for instance? Or maybe we could expand it out from there, but just in terms of maybe we define it by the uses as opposed to just saying blanket, you know, commercial with a %. That's just a thought.
so why don't we talk about that a little bit more? I think that makes sense. But would you have, are you trying to indicate how much of the development, and I'm kind of going back to the percentages. So how much of the, so if you add a story, the presumption is that they're going to be putting commercial on the first floor. However, they could propose, if you didn't have a restriction that the commercial had to be on the first floor, then they might have offices up above. And Bob, what you're talking about is more of the, when you talk about a walkable neighborhood community with services, businesses that someone's going to pop into, they're either going to eat, or they might be stopping for coffee. There might be some other type of retail uses.
But maybe just like professional services too, right? Whether it's a hairdresser or an accountant
Yeah.
or something. I mean, that
Yeah.
kind of seems like with the type of thing that people would be convenient to have go across
Totally.
the street. Yeah.
But I mean, you could even see a supermarket or something being on the first floor, and
Yeah,
you know,
a small market. Yeah,
units, yeah, or a small market, yeah.
yeah, like well, something.
Yeah.
I always thought Bodego had such, this kind of high-end sound to it, and the Bodegos in New York City are very basic.
Or you just like say like, okay, well, an extra floor is that's 1/3 of three. So then you say, okay, well, that's 33%. We're not going to do 30. You say like 20% or something like that. I feel like just to avoid the situation where it's insignificant, we have a number might be required.
Again, my suggestion would be to go with 1/3. Again, just hearing, and what I was trying to say earlier is that in talking to some of my peers, they will say holding a certain percentage, especially the higher you get on the percentage, is difficult to attract that commercial business.
Well, that's why I was staying way low. That's why I was staying low, like 25 or 30%.
Yeah, because I feel
they're
like
all holding to it.
But a third is going to put you at more than one floor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I'd say like 20%.
Yep.
If you get some, commercial built in there, and
well, if you're doing 4 floors, though, that's
yeah, 1 is 33% of 3, obviously, right there. So
yeah.
All right. Well, we can think about that if we need a ratio, or if there's another way to work around that we haven't done it. How about on the parking? Can we mention like shared parking is shared parking can be considered by the planning board, like, but must be under an agreement or something like that.
Sure. Sure. I don't see why not. If you have
Especially when you think about the
then you're
commercial,
encouraging shared parking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not. The thing I'm trying to be careful of is we don't want to have it worded such that HLC thinks it's a restriction instead of actually an incentive.
Okay.
Which is really what it would be,
Mm-hmm.
is an incentive for reduced parking. So why don't you let me and Wayne think about that and how to word it?
You can just say shared parking is allowed if in order to incentivize development. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would explain if they read that and they argued with us, then they get other problems there. Okay. But yeah, okay, yeah, think about that. But just because it comes up, and if you put it in, kind of in writing there, that it has to be under agreement between the, property owners or whatever, then it just kind of is clear.
Yeah. I mean, I can't see where they would balk at that, because again, it would allow more space for either open space or other.
I was going to say that too, that to promote walkable, enjoyable open space. That way it sounds nice, and it actually proves the point of what we're trying to accomplish, not just let them make it more dense.
Yeah. Oh, that we do have, although we do have for business and commercial uses developed under this community housing overlay district mixed use density bonus, parking shall comply with underlying zoning or at a lesser amount as approved by the planning board.
Okay.
So it's there. I was so focused on some of the other areas, I forgot about that. And you know, parking, less parking is my favorite
Mhm.
Thing to go on. So then the board wanted to see a maximum number of dwelling units where the density bonus wasn't being allowed. So what we've done is no restriction on the number of buildings per lot. So there could be multiple buildings on the lot. There shall be at least 20 feet between each building on any single side, any single lot. So this differs from last week because what we were saying previously was that it was 20 feet between the for the side yard setback, but this ensures that there's a minimum 20 feet between any building side and another building side. Did I explain that well or okay?
Oh, just between the sides. Oh, I see what you mean. So, right, yeah, not from the property line necessarily, but
Yes. So if you have multiple buildings on a site, you want to make sure you have adequate distance between each building.
so does that explain it clearly? So if, say, like the first building is built and they still have to be 25 feet from the property line, even though there's nothing next to them yet.
Right. The buildings at the sides of the lot need to be 25 feet. But if then you had two buildings, each of
Within the, yep, say
they would
within
need
the
to be
same
20
parcel,
feet.
right? Yeah. Okay.
yeah, from each other.
Mhm. Okay.
All right, maximum building height we talked about last week being either 3 stories or 45 feet and a maximum of 15 dwelling units per acre.
And that's the requirement, right? By the,
That's right. That is
okay.
maximum. Yeah. Well, so it's the requirement is a minimum of 15 dwelling units per acre. The board wanted to see a cap at the 15 units.
Yeah, that's good. That's what I wanted to do.
And then we have the mixed use residential with business commercial. And these are the proposed dimensional setbacks for that, which remain the same from last week with the cap of a maximum of 25 dwelling units per acre.
Mhm.
And we're going to ask the consultant that's doing the fiscal analysis if that is a reasonable number, a reasonable maximum.
Oh, the 25 per acre?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the maximum when you have mixed use.
Mhm.
And that would be, so maximum of 25 dwelling units, because again, that's the real incentive. If they provide commercial, is being able to do more residential. And then we added a minimum of 30% open space.
So you think that will all work with the density requirement?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And then under dwelling, multifamily. This looks like an addition, a building with 3 or more residential dwelling units or 2 or more buildings on the same lot with more than 1 residential dwelling unit in each building.
Did that go here or just under the definitions?
That actually is under.
Oh, okay, all right, good. Okay, I wasn't sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
And that definition would apply. I mean, if for some reason, at some point in the future, the town wanted to designate another area that maybe wasn't the housing, the community housing, this definition stands. I mean, it's a pretty universal definition. And I think that was it for the changes
Okay.
from what we reviewed.
Yeah. Bob or Mickey, do you have any other comments or suggestions for this, or should we really just kind of look over it for another couple of weeks and then try to get this closed for the next meeting?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is if the board is amenable to considering the 3 districts that we talked about is to post for the public hearing and start the formal public hearing process. And
But no, we don't have to do this though for November, right?
we do have to do it for November, yes. So
Well, the zoning and the,
I was, we
oh,
were
you said
just,
in order to, you mean, in order for it to be reviewed in time for compliance?
right, I think it was 11/2. To give us plenty of time so that if they have feedback or comments and we need to make any adjustments. And that would still need to go through the hearing process, so. I mean, there's
So the
no,
timing gives us, I mean, are we just trying to avoid doing it in the spring, or you're saying the timing really doesn't give us until the spring?
the town needs to adopt the zoning by the end of by spring of 24.
Yeah, so we could wait till the spring and give every single person in town a chance to ask us questions about it if we wanted to.
Well, no, we can't really wait till the spring because then we're running out of time to hold the public input sessions and
Well, board members, what do you think?
presentations to the select board.
Well,
I mean, when we've done these in the past, it's always been helpful for me to see kind of the schedule. And Stephanie, I think you've done these before for us.
Yep.
Where you've got like a schedule that shows how much lead time we need to do the public hearings and get all the input that's required before it goes to town meeting. And I just don't have a great sense for what that looks like right now.
Okay, so we did send out the timeline and I can send that out again. And
I mean, we'll consider it, but I'm just saying right now,
Yeah.
if we don't think we're ready, we have until the spring, if we have to do it in the spring. We're not gonna be out of compliance automatically if we wait till the spring for the zoning. Okay,
okay, we'll put the schedule together.
okay.
It
check.
really, because I'm trying to pull up the action.
I mean, because I think, we were sort of in agreement that we would wait for Amos. So we had a fuller board here before we moved it to that next level. So waiting, until the next meeting for that is not going to jeopardize the deadlines, I assume.
Correct.
Okay, so that's all I needed to hear. Then I
Yes.
think we can
Yes.
at least put
Yes.
that up until.
I'm sorry, I'm very sensitive to
Good idea.
the
I
word
mean,
spring and
I totally get it. And that's why it would be helpful for me to see
Yes.
that schedule. And I
Yes.
apologize if you sent it previously.
well, it meant,
Schedule,
it
yeah.
has everything that we need to do in it, so
Mhm.
I will call out. It's funny, Wayne and I were just looking at it. I'll highlight the actions that are very specific to meeting the deadlines for your hearing and you're noticing the hearing and then for making final decisions and getting it to housing and livable communities.
Right, so you get it through town meeting and then to get everything over to housing and communities to
Yes.
approve it.
Well, we want to send it before.
Well, that's where I kind of, my opinion is different. It's if we're out of compliance for 2 months and they try to like start slapping our hands, then that's their problem. I mean, maybe it's our problem too, but I mean, if we show that we spent the extra time on it because we want to do a good job, and that's not acceptable to the state, then we'll deal with that in our own separately. That's just the way I look at it. It's obviously not the way the town's looking at it right now. I don't know about Bob and Mickey and Amos, but
I have a quick question for that actually, because I deal sometimes in my other job with stuff to the state that if we don't get something in for the certain time, we're precluded from the next year from applying for funding or from receiving funding. And is that the same in this case? Like if we're not in compliance by the date that the state says, we lose funding for or the ability to receive funding for the next year? Or does that kind of like automatically go into effect as soon as we get back into compliance? If that made any sense.
I don't know.
I think we're
the answer to that.
the restriction or the constraint here is town meeting.
Okay.
That's the real constraint. And if the housing and livable communities finds, if they basically say, okay, we can't approve it as it is, you need to make some changes, we won't have a shot at it again until fall town meeting in that of 2024.
Yep.
So that's what I'm familiar with, like having a deadline and kind of working backwards. So I appreciate, I think it just may be because I'm newer to the board. So I just happened to see the timeline. I appreciated kind of seeing that back piece of this is the end date of what we're doing it by, and everything kind of before that, how we have to hit those dates.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
thank
so
you for
Stephanie's
that.
gonna put that together for us and show us where we are in that process and
Oh, it got sent out.
Oh yeah, I know. Okay, well, hopefully Amas is here and we have a full board, so at the next meeting. Are there any
Okay.
comments on this zoning?
Can I stop sharing at this point?
Sure.
All right.
Well, I don't think we had any more MBTA zoning issue. Those are the two primary ones, right, Stephanie? And
Yep.
and we still have those. So next meeting we could hopefully wrap up the text, and then we have to kind of balance out the zoning map changes if that's how that works out with rest of our group.
Yeah, and Peter, if I think it's fine going into the hearings if the board wants to go in with, hasn't fully finalized your options, like
Yeah.
these are the three, and we want to move forward with these and hear back from the public.
Yeah.
Once-
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think maybe since we have so much more, you don't have to keep running numbers, but since we have so much more land area than we need right now,
Right.
then we should at least maybe you could like just kind of do a look at it again and kind of get it kind of closer to where maybe we think it should be.
Yep.
Cool. All right. There are no other comments on.
And again, just because I want to make sure I was clear, I wasn't saying that if going into the hearing you have three, it doesn't mean that you can't reduce either the size or the.
Oh yeah, I got you. No, oh yeah, we'll definitely reduce those. Thank you, though, for agreeing and explaining. So next we have a special permit 23-4, 213 Bay Road. It's just a ZBA request for comment, so not really deciding anything whether or not just seeing if we should recommend or not recommend this to the Board of Appeals. This is where they were increasing their kennel operations kind of somewhat significantly. Stephanie, I think that the applicant letter said this is a business zone, but it's not.
It is.
Oh, is it next to New Stamp?
It's just, I think a couple of lots are just a single lot that was zoned business, and this has pre-existed.
Okay.
You know, they are looking to increase the number of dogs that they keep overnight and the number of dogs that are allowed on the property at any point. We did Suzanne put together a little staff report just summarizing what they're seeking. And the comments from some of the other boards and agencies, some of the other agencies, that's all in your packet.
Okay. My main question about whether or not we should recommend this or not, and besides whether they have a good history of working with the neighborhood, but why the Board of Appeals only approved 8 before, and was it just because that's all the applicant was asking for, or, and like did the applicant not want 15 dogs at the beginning, or they thought it was too much, or did the Board of Appeals like limit that as part of the original special permit?
Yeah, according to the building department, they have reports from neighbors that they're often over capacity and the size of the dogs exceed the original special permit.
That doesn't really, I don't know. Bob, Mickey, what do you think?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Just gonna say, reading kind of and my dog's grumbling in the background. Sorry. Reading the comments from the other boards kind of gives me pause about it.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, this is one of those tricky ones where, because we're just looking at it from a kind of the planning perspective, that it's hard to get the details. I mean, in theory, you've got an existing kennel, you're just trying to, increase the capacity a little bit, but I don't love the idea of, kind of the shoot first, ask questions later, which is what I'm kind of reading between the lines here. That they're sort of operating at this capacity already, and now they're just trying to, make it legit because people have complained. That being said, I mean, it seems like they've already got a kennel, and support local business.
Yeah, well, and then I mean that's in that case we could be in fairness to the applicant and not just reading their whole story and these few comments from town officials. We just have no comment, given that we are not in a meeting with the applicant and have a chance to interview and listen to the neighbors, maybe about us speak.
I'm good with that.
Instead of just not recommending and just assuming that, like, the worst case that the business isn't run well when we don't know that, right? So yeah, that's kind of the
I mean, no, I like that. That's a really good suggestion. I'll make a motion for a no comment recommendation. Stetson.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor? Stetson?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Deshane? Aye. Okay, looks like
it's like the next one I have to recuse myself on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I just want to see if we have any business here before maybe we let you go early tonight.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Oh, minutes. Oh, we have meeting minutes. So no, I did actually. I looked at the meeting minutes right when they were emailed to me, and they look pretty good. Anyone else?
Make a motion to approve the minutes. Stetson.
Second, Wolf.
Okay, all in favor? Wolf?
Aye.
Stetson?
Aye.
Deshane, aye. Stephanie, do you have any important updates to share with us before Bob takes leave?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Bob, you are recused. Have a good night.
Night.
You as well.
Night.
Next, we have variance 48 Pond Street. In this case, the applicant for this, I think it's a variance, was it? Looking to kind of tear down an older home and build a new similarly sized one, as far as I could tell. Stephanie, is that your take on this situation?
I think it's a little larger.
Oh yeah.
In fact, we have the table. Let's see. So right now, let's see, what are the changes? You have the frontage, no change. Building height is it is a little higher because of the setbacks. It's set closer to the road, so your side yard setback is 15 feet. There's not going to be, it's currently 14 feet. So it's a non-conforming lot. It's a pre-existing non-conforming lot. So there's no change in the side yard setback. There is, right now, 24 feet is provided for the rear, which is 4.3 over the minimum. And they're proposing 20.2. So it's still over the minimum on the rear. And then let me
the only thought I really had was I'm okay with recommending this, but the only thought I had was that, it seems a possibility that at least the garage could move over just to make the garage conforming, just move it over 8 feet from the side. I mean 8 inches from the side. Well, 10 inches.
Yeah.
Just a, I
Yeah,
mean,
it looks like they're building the garage pretty much, it
Mhm.
looks like the garage is pretty much in the same
Yep.
size.
yeah,
And
just a little bigger. I mean, but it's kind of like, what's the difference between, at this point, it's 14, it's going to be 14.2, and what's another,
Right.
changing it 10 inches, is that really going to make this change like that much less
right,
non-conform?
I don't know if they're trying to construct on an existing.
No, it might be like
Foundation,
like
but
the landscaping
let's
and
see.
maybe some rocks there or something. I have no idea, but yeah. Well, I don't think it's not like it's like a 6-bedroom house that's just like overcrowding the entire lot. And it's kind of similar. If you look, I just looked at like the satellite view and I saw a lot of structures that were closer to the property lines than the bylaw allows. So it is, in a way, it's kind of a nature of that, how that some of the homes they were built are allowed to be built. Nikki, what do you think?
I took a look at it. It seemed pretty reasonable. And again, I'm pretty new at this, so I try to study pretty carefully.
Oh, gotcha.
But it seemed pretty well laid out. So yeah.
All right. Good. Well, I'm not really supposed to make motion. I don't know if you know the systems. That's like working the historical, but I'm not supposed to make motions, and there's only 2 of us here.
All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the
Just recommending it for the board of appeals.
recommending approval. Sorry.
Yep.
All right.
Second, Shane.
All right.
Okay. All in favor? Shane, aye. Wolf.
Wolf, aye.
All right. I got to go first that time. Thanks. So we think we've covered everything now. I didn't have any updates, and the time to give updates was when Robert was here. So Stephanie, do you have any non-updates?
No.
Yes. Great. Looks like, is that it? That's all we have, right?
All right.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Motion? Yeah.
I did.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Wolf?
Aye.
Shane? Aye. Okay. I went against protocol there. I made a motion, but thanks everyone. Have a nice night.
There we go. All right.
Yep.
Have a
Good
good
night.
Yep.
Yeah.